CAT aspirants, welcome back to another Power Packed session from Time, your trusted mentor in test prep. In our last video, we explored why figures of speech matter in reading comprehension. Today, let's take a step further. Understanding figures of speech isn't just about spotting them. It's about interpreting their impact on the passage's tone and meaning. Now, you would wonder, why does this matter for the CAT? Because reading comprehension questions often test your ability to infer, analyze tone and spot subtle author biases, all of which hinge on figures of speech. In this video, we'll dissect more examples and see how recognizing these devices can give you an edge in tackling tricky RC questions. So, let's dive in. The topic for the day: figures of speech where words come alive. Now, let's quickly first take a recap of figures of speech and what they actually are. So, figures of speech are those expressions that go beyond their literal meaning to create a rhetorical impact or vivid imagery, and they enhance communication in many ways. Let's take a look at what they do. They convey meaning in a more engaging way. They add depth, emphasis, or stylistic effect, and these are the few ways in which they enhance communication. They also do that by drawing comparisons or associations that resonate with the reader or the listener. Fine. So, we have the next few coming up that are commonly spotted in RC passages and are commonly used by authors as well. So, we have a euphemism. Now, euphemism is defined as a mild or subtle or indirect manner or of speaking or of presenting an idea. So, what is this figure of speech all about? It is that mild or indirect word or expression or phrase that is used in the place of something that is harsh or unpleasant. Okay, this example, he passed away. This is something we come across and use so commonly, so often. He passed away instead of he died. So, while he died sounds a little harsh and even unpleasant, if the word died is replaced by passed away, then this is an example of euphemism. Now, what is the significance? It softens difficult or sensitive topics, making language more palatable, and that's exactly what this example has done. It has ended up in ensuring that the impact is slightly lessened or made less harsh. Then we have the next one, which is an oxymoron. Now, oxymoron is quite commonly used by authors, and it is that figure of speech which combines contradictory terms. So, when you come across a pair of words which oppose each other or which are opposites of each other, then you can be sure that you have effectively spotted an oxymoron. Deafening silence. Okay, what is deafening cannot be silent, and if it is silence, it cannot be deafening. But this has been used, or this phrase has been created for some effect or impact, and this is a very suitable example of an oxymoron. It creates a striking contrast that provokes thought or emphasis. Okay, we also can have silent laughter, act naturally, and all these are examples of oxymoron. So, whenever you come across them in reading, try to stop there and focus on it and try to understand what the significance is, why is it that the author has used it, and what is the author trying to do. We have the next one, which is an irony. An irony can be defined as a contrast between expectation and reality, and often is tinged with a humorous or sarcastic effect. So, the example is a fire station burning down. So, a fire station, the purpose of a fire station is to help prevent fire, and if we have this situation where a fire station has burned down, then we can certainly consider this to be an ironic situation. Okay. It highlights absurdity or adds depth to statements by reversing expected meaning. So, this is also a very commonly employed figure of speech, and you need to understand it by working on it more, trying to look up for those excerpts or sentences or examples where authors have used irony. The next one is a paradox. So, similar to an oxymoron, a paradox is a statement that appears self-contradictory but reveals a deeper truth. So, while an oxymoron is a pair of contradictory words, a paradox is a statement in which two opposing or self-contradictory ideas are placed together, and the purpose or the objective is to create or to reveal a truth which is very deep in spite of the contradiction that is obvious there. So, as in Ludwig Mies van der Rohe's widely known principle, less is more. Okay, so this person's principle is less is more. Now, if we consider it, then we would find that there is a clear contradiction. Less can't be more and more can't be less, but less is more tells us that there is something which is hidden in it, and this is something which is very profound. It encourages critical thinking by challenging conventional logic, and I am sure this example would have helped you understand why this significance is important, because it does help us, or it does make us think deeper or question the logic which the example presents. Then we have an antithesis. Antithesis is defined as the juxtaposition of opposing ideas in a balanced structure. So, don't get confused. There are subtle differences between oxymoron, paradox and antithesis, and if you consider the examples closely, you will realize that they are all very different from one another. So, the example is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So, here we see that the first part of the sentence contains something which is positive, and immediately after that there is something that is that opposes it. It was the worst of times. So, the times in which a person is traveling, or the time which a person is going through, the person or the author of this sentence considers them to be both good and bad. So, the best of times and the worst of times, two opposing superlatives have been used, and as you can also read and understand that the ideas that are placed together are such that the structure is absolutely balanced. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Okay, a little practice and focus will help you interpret or identify this in a more easily and in a better sense. Okay, now there's another by Neil Armstrong, which he said when he went to the moon in 1969. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. So, here also we can see that two opposing ideas have been placed in the same sentence, but the presentation is such that it leaves us with a balanced sentence structure. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. So, what is the contradiction? Small step and giant leap, but the manner of presentation is such that both the ideas, in spite of being opposing, are giving us a balanced structure. Okay, so what does this help us understand? It emphasizes contrast to create a powerful impact on the reader, and we need to keep in mind the importance or the significance of this figure of speech. Moving further, we have malapropism. Malapropism, mal means bad, so this should help you keep the definition in mind. Malapropism is the mistaken use of a word in place of a similar sounding one, often with humorous results. So, while the result is of course humorous for the listener, it is certainly something that may cause embarrassment to the one who is not aware of it and utters it without thinking of it. So, malapropism, a very good example is, I know the geometry of contagious countries. Now, contagious countries, contagious means infectious. Do we have countries that are infectious? The author actually intended to say, I know the geography of contiguous countries, countries that are side by side or neighboring countries, but because these two words, contagious and contiguous, are almost similar in spelling, this gave rise to a confusion, and the author ended up in using them inappropriately. So, we have an example of malapropism. Malapropism, as already mentioned, creates comedic effect and can highlight character flaws or confusion. The next one now is onomatopoeia. Now, onomatopoeia is something which we use very often and we come across it in writing, but more than in writing, it is also used in oral communication. The only difference is that because we may not be aware of this figure of speech, we are not able to identify or recognize it even when we so commonly use it or frequently use it. So, it is a word that imitates the sound it represents. For example, the bees buzzed in the garden. So, the sound of the bees is buzzing, and when we say the bees buzzed in the garden, the dry leaves rustled under my feet, or the snake hissed, then all these words buzzed, rustled and hissed are examples of onomatopoeia. Now, what is the significance? Onomatopoeia or this figure of speech enhances sensory imagery, something that relates to our senses, especially the sense of hearing, and makes descriptions more vivid. Now we have pun. Now what is pun? Pun is a play on words that exploits multiple meanings for humor or emphasis, and authors employ pun very frequently. So, as has been given, it is a play on words. You may be aware that certain words have many meanings, and if an author is able to employ all the meanings and create some kind of humor in the presentation, then we can say that the author has utilized pun very effectively. So, take a look at this example. Time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Now, what do you find here? Time flies like an arrow. So, here there is a comparison, and fruit flies like a banana. So, fruit flies, the reference is to flies, F-L-Y, and F-L-I-E-S is a plural. So, fly is a creature, an insect, and in the second part of the same sentence, the author says fruit flies, those creatures, like a banana, or they are fond of a banana, whereas in the first part, the author says time flies like an arrow, where the word fly has been used as a verb. Now, while the meanings are different, the words used are the same, and different forms and different meanings have been utilized, creating a pun. The importance, we have another sentence or another example. The dying Mercutio quips in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. If any one of you has read this, then you would be aware of this. Ask for me tomorrow and you shall find me a grave man. So, ask for me tomorrow and you shall find me a grave man. Here, grave means serious, but here grave can also refer to that, that structure under which a dead man is buried. Now, the dying Mercutio says this. So, grave actually or grave man has different meanings, and there is a play of words here, which is something which we have to catch. Okay, and Shakespeare was very good at creating puns, and if you have read Shakespeare, then you would also be aware of this fact. The importance or the significance is that using pun adds wit and humor while demonstrating linguistic creativity. Of course, that was Shakespeare's forte. Okay. Here's an excerpt, a short paragraph to help you understand or to also put you to task to try to identify the figure of speech that is very vividly used here. Now, of course, let me read out this for you, and while I do so, you can also try to spot the figure of speech. In the quiet solitude of the ancient library, the books whispered tales of forgotten wisdom and timeless ignorance. So, in the quiet solitude of the ancient library, the books whispered. Do books whisper? Can books whisper? No. So, what is this? This is an example of a personification. Each page turned was a journey into the known and unknown. Now, each page turned was a journey. Here we find that the author has employed or used hyperbole, exaggeration, a dance between clarity and ambiguity. The more I sought answers, the more questions unfurled, creating a labyrinth of understanding. It was a realm where certainty and doubt intertwined. So, certainty and doubt, we have what? We have a paradox over here, and because certainty and doubt are separated by and or connected by and, we cannot consider this to be an oxymoron. What we have here is an example of a paradox, where the illumination of knowledge casts shadows of uncertainty. So, here we go. The paradox continues. In the silence of that scholarly heaven, enlightenment echoed through the haloed halls. So, enlightenment is echoing. That means here enlightenment has been personified. It is an abstract figure of abstract noun, and it is being personified, and therefore the author says enlightenment echoed through the haloed halls, a silent symphony of the profound and the perplexing. So, there may be more figures of speech in here, and it is up to you to read this or pause the video here and try to go through this excerpt again and try to identify the figures of speech that I have not spotted out for you, and you also will get to interpret the implied meaning, the underlined tones in a better way. For more of such videos, please do not forget to like, follow and subscribe to our channel www.timeforeducation. Wishing you luck. Thank you.